Now, we are still a long way off finding any significant proof as to the origins of coronavirus, but US government documents released under a Freedom of Information request suggest that theories between scientific labs and its escape into the world may not be complete conspiracy. The documents say viral samples from Lao bats were being collected and sent for study in the Wuhan Institute of Virology, with the genetics being very similar to those found in COVID-19. Well, joining me now is oncologist at St George's University of London, Angus Dalgleish. Angus, what do the latest documents from the US reveal?
It reveals that they've known an awful lot more about this than they've been prepared to admit and indeed discuss. And they've allowed the mantra of the fact that they wanted the whole world to accept that it jumped from a bat to a human to exist and take the pressure off the fact that to anybody with any knowledge who's looked at this at all immediately realizes that this was very, very similar to agents which are in that Wuhan lab, which were being engineered or passaged. And by I mean passage, they pass them through various human cell lines, so they become much more adaptable to infect humans, which we know it is. Everybody has said, why is this virus so supremely adapted for humans? And it is because it wasn't a completely natural virus. There is an incredible amount of leaked information coming out all the time. And it appears to me, I've been discussing with my colleagues, is that we think it's all part of a obfuscation to try and really confused what even people who are very convinced it came from a laboratory. Basically, Matt Ridley, who's released a book recently with researcher Chan, and what they conclude it's most likely from a laboratory, but say they'll never know, there'll never ever be proof. Well, I actually completely disagree with that. I think that there is proof. And I and my colleagues have had an enormous hard time publishing. We had to actually publish our sequences of the virus, which made it look like it had been engineered and passaged in the lab and no other thing. We had to disguise it as a vaccine paper. And subsequently, we've completed a complete trawl of the literature, which goes very well to show that that the viruses that have leaked out and causing this enormous pandemic, but all came from the laboratory. If they ever came from a bat, whether it be from the mines, the famous mine site where there's been bats 1,000 miles away, or whether it came from Laos or anywhere else, it was basically they have been changed in the laboratory, and this is a terrible leak. And since I last talked to you, I'd like to say that we've actually released a book called The Origin of the Virus. I don't know if you can see that, but it's The Origin of the Virus. And the first author is Barnard, which we go into all this. And we have Stephen Key contributing to it. Now, Stephen Key was the guy who presented all the evidence to Congress in the US and led to them opening up. We have to look again at the origins of the virus. And he's a fantastic, pragmatic Bayesian analysis of every piece of information known, where he's moved from a bat to a human leak, where he puts all the facts in. By the time he's finished, the computer says it's 99.9% a laboratory leak. And that's what I and my colleagues have believed all along. And we think all this is really quite incredible that they're looking at things which have been out there for ages and then trying to reposition them. So I'm very, very cautious about the interpretation, because as I said, the mantra seems to be is, all right, it's very likely it came from a laboratory, but we will never have the proof, so forget it. That seems to be what everybody wants now to be out there. And what does it matter? Well, I argue it matters a lot, because we don't nail this, it's going to happen again.
So when people are saying there is no proof, and that seems to be the sort of standard line, you're saying that if you look at the sequencing of this virus, if you look, I suppose, under a microscope, as you do when you analyse things like viruses, and look at the way it's sort of been put together, that you don't think there's any way that that could have happened zoonotically or organically, or that it's unlikely?
It's a very good question. No, I don't. And a lot of my colleagues have said, these changes that you point out could have happened by chance. Well, yes, they could have happened by chance. But when it happens in a very constructed way, with the inserts that we picked up, they said, well, this could have happened by chance. And if they'd been inserted, we would have known because they leave a trace. Well, if you look at the contributors of the papers about these things, Barrick, there's a chap called Dr. Barrick from the United States. He was the guy who invented the technique to put inserts in so you can find no trace. It's like seamless sewing. I mean, it's ludicrous explanations they've given for these findings. There's too many changes in just the right place that leads to this virus to have a magnetic attraction to the receptor. Natural viruses do not do that. And that's why it is all there. And I believe that we have a paper where we've gone through every single published virus isolate with Berger Sorensen and his colleagues in Norway, that I believe is absolute proof. And this mantra of saying there is no proof, it's no different from Nelson saying there are no ships in sight. Holding it to his blind eye. And I think that's exactly what everybody's doing. But I do think we need to take this absolutely serious, because this thing has not just been a little endemic which has taken out less than 1% of the population. No, it's established. It's going to come in waves after waves after waves again, and it needs to be addressed properly and stop being ignored.
Yeah, you're a scientist, and you've really dug into this and looked at it from a sort of at a very sort of precise level, a level that most of us would have no idea how to do. But this is hugely politically dangerous, isn't it? Because if you're right in what you're saying, and some of the reports out, and in fact those leaked documents suggest that the virus from this particular bat, the Lao bat, was what was brought to the Wuhan laboratories by American scientists for these experiments, then this implicates not just China and culpability for a potential leak from their laboratory, but it actually implicates the United States as well, doesn't it?
Absolutely, and it implicates right at the very, very top, because all this work was done and the connivance of Anthony Fauci, who's held up as the great white leader of saving America from this pandemic, etc., is always on the media. He was under Trump, under Biden. Well, actually, he is trying to kill this narrative too, because it was he who funded the Eco Health Alliance through Peter Daszak to do this work, because he wasn't allowed to do it in America. And it was he who funded Barrick, who's the guy with the supreme techniques of being able to stitch up DNA and RNA together so you will never know, and put him in it. And there's no cover-up here of the facts, because the publications are all out there. They're in Journal of Virology, Nature Medicine. And if you look at the acknowledgements, you'll find that this work was actually funded with grants signed off by Anthony Fauci. This is a major reason now why people are very embarrassed to go looking for the real truth. But it did definitely come from the Wuhan labs. And it's worth pointing out that there are several labs in Wuhan, but there's more bat virus isolates and being engineered and passaged in Wuhan probably than any other place in the entire world.
Now, I mean, I'm duty-bound to point out that, you know, the mantra of the day, as you said, is that none of these things are proven. You say you have the scientific evidence pointing in that direction. And, of course, I'm not able right now to give a right of reply to Dr. Barrick or Anthony Fauci on your claims. But, you know, do you ever worry about the fact that you may have uncovered something that is so enormous, so explosive, you're struggling to get this publicised? I can imagine why, if what you say adheres to absolute veracity. Do you ever feel concerned that you're sitting on this information and people out there know that you're sitting on this information?
Well, I think what I feel really concerned about is that there's been a sort of conspiracy to silence it and ignore it. I mean, even top scientists have told me, and I've discussed this with them, well, we don't want to get into a fight with China about this, so it's best that we don't probe any further. Well, if you don't probe any further and find the facts, you're never going to learn exactly what went on. And you're never going to be able to prevent this reproducing again. There will be another escape in the future. It might be a worse virus. It might be another type of virus. Until you have the mechanisms in place, how did this get out? Why was it suppressed? Why were the Americans complicit in it? Why is every publisher and editor, every major medical journal in the world also a part of the conspiracy to keep the narrative completely damped down and only allow this bat zoonosis thing, which, as Stephen Key, one of my co-authors, pointed out, this is a very funny zoonosis because this virus cannot infect any bat cell or any bat. If this was a zoonosis, there would be back to human to bat infection for decades before it finally decided which one it was going to adapt to. So this is the thing that I found really disturbing, is that science is dead over this. The scientists have refused to look at the evidence. They've only gone political. I mean, the scientific move that if Donald Trump thought this was made in a lab, then all the left-wing Democrat scientists said, therefore, that is enough evidence for me that it was natural. And I'm not joking. That seems to be the logic of these people. They did not look, even people very, very high up in the scientific establishment in the UK have basically brushed this aside. Well, it's obvious, we don't need to look any further. The purpose of science is to examine, come to speculation, do experiments to prove one way or the other. No, this is the big story to me, is it's been completely flattened and damped down for political reasons. I don't know any other instance, a case in history, recent history certainly, where this has been allowed to happen.
Welcome to the GB News YouTube channel. You can watch us live 24 hours a day, catch up on your favourite shows and join in the conversation in the comments below.
Don't forget to subscribe and you'll never miss any of our exclusive content.